because it's hard after reading this to think he was a good man.
Welcome to WatchMojoUK, and today we're looking at times celebrities found out their ancestors were the baddies all along.
Every story needs a villain, and it just happens to be that our ancestor is probably going to be the villain.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Number 10. Poisoner.
Death from poisoning by carbolic acid, accidentally administered. Oh, for goodness sake. Wow. By whom?
Singer Leslie Garrett found out there may have been murder most foul in her family history, though we don't know for sure. She discovers that her great-grandmother died after drinking carbolic acid. Because bottles weren't as clearly labelled at the time, apparently this was a surprisingly common way to go.
The medicine bottle was also on the mantel shelf, and it too was labelled and similar in shape to the one containing the poison.
But the question remains, did great-granddad Charlie poison his wife on purpose? The entire inquest, held just days later, was staffed by locals Charlie knew well, and simply believed that he'd given her carbolic acid by accident.
My great-grandfather just said sorry, gave her the wrong bottle, and he was believed.
We may never know the real story, but at the very least, his incompetence had the same result as if he'd been genuinely trying to kill her. Number 9. Abandoned children.
Dear sir, I'm writing to you on behalf of Maxwell Youngson, so Grandad.
Yes, your granddad, huh?
I had a letter from his elder sister, at present in Australia.
This absolutely heartbreaking story emerged when Anna Maxwell Martin tried to find out more about her grandfather and his family, learning that there were many children in his cohort and that they didn't have the best start to life. She wanted to know exactly why they were all put into an orphanage, and it seemed that her great-grandparents weren't up to snuff.
It's just because it's so little as somebody's saying, I'll have him, I don't need anything, and they're obviously still saying...
And that's his older sister who he never met.
We don't know exactly what happened, but the children desperately try to reunite, with one sister trying to get custody of Maxwell, despite never having met him, to take him to Oceania. The reason the orphanage kept refusing to release Maxwell was because the children's father was viewed to be that dangerous and wicked.
Well, they didn't want Maxwell's, your grandfather, to go get out of the orphanage because they didn't want him to be in the influence of his father. His father was such a bad man.
Number 8. Slave compensation.
1839 would have been 5 years since the abolition of slavery in 1834.
Marvin Humes of JLS fame headed down to Jamaica to visit an estate a branch of his family still owns, Comfort Hall. Though the estate is 80 acres, it's no longer being used for farming, lying derelict and unkempt. Things took a turn for the disturbing, however, when Marvin met with a historian who found out that slaves used to live and work at Comfort Hall. Slaves owned by John Williams, his ancestor.
Your 4 times great-grandfather receives compensation of £53 and 3 shillings for 2 persons who were enslaved on his property at Comfort Hall.
Under British rule, Jamaica was one of the most brutal colonies in the world, with no part of society untouched by slavery. A lot of people may have owned slaves, but that doesn't exonerate his ancestors. When slavery was abolished, his family were paid compensation.
You're saying that John Williams was the slave master on Comfort Hall?
White persons in Jamaica and large landowners were not the only persons who owned enslaved people.
Number 7. The family temper.
I find it pretty amazing that my mum's grandfather has been completely forgotten, considering he fought in the First World War.
There was an entire side of Cheryl's family that she and her mother knew nothing about, and that's exactly the kind of thing Who Do You Think You Are loves to investigate. That man was Joseph Ridley, a war hero who started a new family and was subsequently disavowed by the previous one. Writing anonymously, one of Cheryl's relatives told her about Joseph and how he was rarely talked about.
Joseph was never really discussed in our family. other than referenced in rather derogatory terms as Old Man Ridley?
It turns out that he was known for his temper, which came out when he drank and is apparently hereditary. If that's true, Cheryl herself may not have escaped those genes. She was notably convicted of assault in 2003 after getting into a fight with someone in a nightclub toilet.
A Ridley trait is that most of us have a quick temper, and from what I've been told, Grandad Ridley was no exception. Some in the family say he was troubled and volatile, and his temper would often be fueled by excessive drinking.
Number 6. Scam artist.
And here in, I think 1862 is another reference to him dealing or brokering gold mining in Wales.
Star of stage and screen, Rupert Everett found out that he had a swindler in his family during his episode, with his ancestor Frederick deciding to leave England entirely and set sail. It turns out that he very well may have been running from something, and that thing may have been those various allegations made about him ripping people off.
Charge of fraud against a stockbroker. Yesterday, Mr. Frederick Everett, a stockbroker, again appeared before the Lord Mayor.
In the 19th century, Frederick was involved in speculation scams about gold mining, encouraging people to invest with intent to defraud, as the newspaper article says.
Investors were encouraged to direct their money into speculative schemes with little official oversight.
That's certainly the kind of thing that would drive someone to flee the country, since he wasn't able to make money in the city anymore, even though he was acquitted. Number 5. Strikebreaker.
He's in the turret, chucking stones at them.
Something like that.
Pretty much.
Yes.
Throughout the mid-19th century, the Chartist movement grew, demanding such controversial things as secret ballots and universal male suffrage. The Chartists were ultimately crushed, but by the next century, just about everything they demanded was implemented by the British government, no thanks to Jack Whitehall's villainous ancestor. That man, Thomas Jones Phillips, was tasked with spying on the Chartists involved in the Newport Rising in 1839.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It is our ancestor Thomas Jones Phillips. He's the dodgy emissary that's come to the meeting in like a bad disguise.
Predictably for someone as posh as Whitehall, who was joined by his equally upper-class dad, Phillips opposed the Chartist movement and worked tirelessly against them, donning disguises and keeping a log of their names and movements.
They're forming mobs and they're heading down towards Newport, and our ancestor is trailing them in his first-class coach, monitoring them at every point.
Number 4. Colonial Past.
It indicates where he started his career in the colonial service and where he finished it.
Yeah.
So if you look at here,
Sierra
his
Leone.
first post is in Sierra Leone.
Reggie Yates left the UK to learn about his great-great-grandfather, Augustus George Lloyd, who was a colonial administrator for the British Empire in the Gold Coast, which is today modern Ghana. The show tries to dress this up, but Lloyd's jobs working for the colony included acquiring land and convincing locals to become gold miners, jobs where they certainly wouldn't have been treated properly under British rule.
And if we go through the file, you'll see here that A.G. Lloyd was in the Gold Coast as a traveling commissioner.
His sole job was to make the Gold Coast profitable for the Empire, with many generations of Yates's family living in Ghana. The same British government that A.G. Lloyd worked for went on to try and deport Reggie's father back to Ghana after he emigrated.
Something to do with you and immigration, and you being here in the UK, and it becoming quite a big deal when the government tried to send you back to Ghana.
Number 3. Russian Roulette.
But was it a common thing to do, to play Russian roulette here?
Not that I know of, but I think it was with Tom.
More from the former colonies. Alan Cumming headed to Malaysia to find out why his ancestor Tom Darling had died at the young age of 35. We find out from one of Darling's old friends in the colonial police force, who still lives in Kuala Lumpur, that he died playing Russian roulette with the locals.
I'm sorry to have to say that to you.
Oh, don't worry, I want to
And as I say, I wasn't holding his hand at the time it happened.
It's claimed that an experienced Russian roulette player can tell if the bullet is in the chamber by the weight distribution, meaning he's got an advantage over the people he's playing with. Bearing in mind that, of course, if you lose Russian roulette, you're almost certainly going to die. The colonial police were already despised for the many other crimes they committed too.
What state of mind must he have been in to be getting his kicks from being in some little bar, putting a gun to his head.
Number 2. Attempted murder.
And on the very instant that they appeared, they were knocked down and received many desperate stabs.
Like many celebrities, Emma Willis found out she had Irish ancestry, so headed across the sea to Dublin to investigate. Unfortunately, what she found was rather unpleasant. She was shown documents saying that her ancestor, Richard Fowler, was suspected of attempted murder in the late 18th century.
On their arrival at the guardhouse, they were again stabbed with bayonets.
He was involved in a violent attack on 2 men, along with some other Orange men, members of the ultra-Protestant Orange Order. It was a politically motivated crime against Irish Unionists, and was reported on at the time.
They did survive, so they weren't killed on that night.
Willis was horrified by the details of the crime, though relieved to learn that the victims, Michael and Thomas Egan, survived their assailants.
I felt quite sick when I was reading it, because it's so detailed.
Number 1. Slave owners.
He owned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 slaves.
I can see that.
Celebrity chef Ainsley Harriott also went to Jamaica, and like Marvin Humes, found out that he had slave owners in his family. Records from the turn of the 19th century prove that his ancestors were once white slave owners. The historian he's working with shows him documents detailing his property, which turns out to be over 30 slaves on his large estate.
One moment you're feeling this almost hatred for people who dominated and controlled.
His reaction to the news says it all. It's an utterly harrowing thing to have to reconcile with the effects of 400 years of the transatlantic slave trade still affecting communities to this day.
Didn't expect this at all.
He says he never imagined that he'd have white people in his lineage, let alone multiple generations of slavers.
So this was something that was passed down through the family, learning the skill and art
Of purchasing your slaves.
Let us know in the comments if you've ever found out anything dark about your family history.
This is shocking.